Hey guys, welcome back to the Good Stuff Podcast, where we talk about all the good stuff going on in Union County. This week we are talking to Steve Stolte, longtime resident here in the Marysville area. A pretty influential guy who's done a lot and left his fingerprints all over the community. So today we're talking about the history of growth, kind of in Ohio, mostly here in Union County, Marysville. We talk about subdivisions and additions, how they were put together in the past, if there's any lessons from that we can learn for the future, the Greenville Treaty Line, the way history kind of unveiled itself in the forming of counties and cities and all of that back in the day. How important collaboration is to the future of Marysville and how we grow as a community and stay a quality community and all that good stuff. So hopefully you enjoy. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all the things. And until then, enjoy. Have you ever, so you were saying you did some research on some of the neighborhoods and things.
All right.
And on the MLS, when I look, it's amazing how many actual neighborhoods there are when you break them down. I was quite impressed. And there's a lot of things in town like that. The more you dig into it, the more you find. What were you most surprised to find in your research? Anything that stuck out?
Well, I guess I was looking pretty much at any areas that developed, say, since the 50s or 60s. And I guess some things that jumped out at me was where growth happened. Mm-hmm. And if you look in that time frame, say of since the 1950s, say, most of the single family residential growth has happened north and south. And that's pretty intuitive when you think about it. There's been some that's happened east and west, but substantially more has happened the northern part of the city and the southern part of the city. Now that's single family residential growth. When you think about multifamily growth, mm-hmm. It's been kind of the opposite. It's been east and west, and maybe the most in the east. All the apartments that we've seen, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were a pretty good slug of apartments built there on Watkins Road. Mm-hmm. And now we've seen, again in the east, we've seen the apartments across from Benny's. We've seen the apartments next to Home Depot. We're seeing more slated to be built next to Walmart. And so the east has clearly been, I think, been more apartments built there. And in the west, you got the residential development that's around Ace and around Kroger's, that multifamily in there. But the east, I think, clearly has been more. Again, that's single family and multifamily. Commercial and retail clearly has been largely in the east, with the construction of Coleman's Crossing and City Gate. We've had some commercial and retail development in the west, but not nearly like we've seen on the east side of town.
For sure. So, running through that, I picture in my head, I assume, would most of that be due to 33? And at least on the west, that seems like kind of a hard cutoff there, in the cemetery and.
Well, of course, 33 was built in the late 60s. The bypass, and then the 33 connection to 270 happened in the late 60s, and that clearly has driven a good bit of that development. Certainly, the Coleman's Crossing development, City Gate, I think has been driven largely because of the 33, and there's not enough. There's not enough space around our uptown. But prior to that, it was traditionally that kind of growth happened in the uptown.
So I spoke with the late Bob Carson a few years ago, and I believe he said his family moved here in 33. And one of the things that stuck out, just to get his perspective on what things looked like back then, and him saying that everything then was within a block and a half of the downtown square.
Sure.
And it's so interesting to think. I forget the thing. I need to go back and look at it or listen to it. But a few car dealerships, the gas station, the grocery store, everything was right in one area. So it's obviously we've come quite a ways since then.
And then we had, the strip center there is at 5 Points. That was a Kroger. Kroger was in there at one time.
I forgot about that. Is that where Board of Elections is?
Yes. And then in the 70s, there was the Marysville Plaza began on the west side, and that was expanded a couple of times, I think.
Oh, really?
Now, of course, will be torn down and be redeveloped.
Is that multi-story?
It's going to be multifamily, I think, on the back part, and there will be a number of outlots added along the street.
At one point, I heard it was restricted to 1 story because of the dirt underneath wasn't sufficient for 2 stories.
I've not heard that.
Okay, that was a while ago, and that was part of the slow process was finding a developer that could figure out how to get enough revenue out of the restriction.
I've not heard that.
Okay. Yeah,
doesn't mean it's not true. I'm not in the loop like I once was. So.
Well, you've served your time. It's time to let somebody else. I think it was Terry Emery that said it. So if that was the case, I assume it was accurate. Okay.
And just maybe one comment is, planners always tell you that it's a good thing to have concentric growth, where you have develop in kind of rings, so to speak, around a city. That's most generally considered to be most desirable, and of course that you can't literally do that just because of where roads are. We don't have hills or mountains here, but that could affect how a city would develop also. But so I guess you would kind of expect or maybe hope that you'd have that kind of concentric growth, that it would be kind of balanced around the city. And I think clearly we've seen the residential, again, the single family happen north and south. And so maybe there needs to be more single family on the west side and even on the east side.
Yeah, on the west side, that's what I've been interested in with because the way it's laid out and the homes that are already there on the other side, on the west side of 33, doesn't really add much. And Heart of Ohio that's out there, that probably is another restriction there. And then outside of that, you're getting kind of farther away from town and less development. But that's getting out towards the Stillwater development, which obviously there's all that going on there.
I mean, I've always thought that. Again, this is my own personal opinion, was that potentially the Heart of Ohio would develop, and I think it's in the city now, and there's certainly ground around that could easily develop.
So I guess I forgot one important thing. Let the folks out there kind of have an idea of why you might know what you're talking about when it comes to any of this in your history. And
well, again, my name's Steve Stolte. I was county engineer here for 24 years, then took a hiatus for 2 years, and then was appointed a county commissioner and ran twice for that position and served 10 years as commissioner. Prior to my becoming county engineer, I had my own business here for a period of about 12 years, engineering and surveying. So yeah, sorry, I forgot to start with that there's a reason you might know a thing or two about developing and engineering and all the things that kind of go into that. And obviously, as a commissioner, you got to broaden those horizons and understand more of the picture and development and whatnot. And when I was prior to my becoming county engineer, I used to regularly attend Marysville City Planning Commissions. I don't know that I would miss one unless there was some kind of a conflict that I couldn't get out of. Yeah, love to go to those planning commission meetings and observe local government in action.
Mm-hmm. So out of that long career, what if is there one thing you think you can point to that might aid in today's, your best piece of advice from your years of wisdom and what you saw and worked through? And
Well, I guess I've learned over the years that collaboration is critical. It's important to get along with people. It's important to work with people. You don't always have to agree with them, but you have to be willing to sit down and maybe find middle ground on issues. But collaboration is important. I remember when I became a county commissioner, some of my old county engineer friends would say, "Why in the world do you want to become a county commissioner?" I said, "Well, I've got a lot of knowledge between my ears, and some county engineers hardly ever talk to their commissioners, which I just don't understand. It makes a county engineer's job much easier if they have a close working relationship with commissioners, and it makes a city's job in general much easier if they have a good relationship with county officials, and vice versa."
For sure. And I think that's one of the interesting things about that, on a side note, somewhat related. The things I've been to over the years that are city or county or the chamber, or depending on who it is, sometimes there are somewhat arbitrary lines of division between things and who takes care of things. And as residents, a lot of times it's hard to see those lines, and it's just like funding. Well, why didn't that money go here or there? And obviously there's a backstory for all of those things and why it is the way it is. And I can recall times of folks at the chamber saying, well, we kind of have to do it this way because of those reasonings. And anyway, so just the collaborative part is obviously so much more important when you have dividing lines and split responsibilities and roles to get through those things. And where does one leave off and the other pick up?
Right. A lot of times members of the general public don't understand what the responsibilities of city government are, what responsibilities of county government. In general, cities can do about anything they want to, as long as it's not contrary to Ohio law. Counties, on the other hand, can only do what Ohio law tells them they can do. So there's a difference there.
Really?
Counties cannot pass laws. Cities can. They can pass ordinances. Counties cannot do that. They can only do what state government allows them to do.
Interesting. I heard somebody joke once. Who is the guy that came through responsible for setting up the townships and the way everything's laid out? I forget his name. Anyway, they jokingly blamed him for starting that process of how things are divided and how things are broken up. And I'm always fascinated by the history of why things are the way they are because of what happened 100, 200 years ago, whatever it might be.
Back in the 1700s, the land east of us, Pennsylvania and all the original colonies, were all surveyed based on just arbitrary lines. Maybe a property might be bounded by a creek or by the ridge of a hill. But Ohio is a proving ground for rectangular-based survey systems. And that was provided for in the ordinance of 1787. And Ohio has something like 20 different types of land systems in it, where they were tried here, tried there, and then based on Ohio's experience, that was then used for the rest of the country to lay out.
Really?
Yes. Now, we don't notice that here much in Union County because we're part of the Virginia Military District, which was laid out exactly the way things were done in the East, which is a haphazard system. But the rest of the state was laid out based on a rectangular-based system.
Yeah, and that's what the gentleman was referring to.
Yes, where you might have a townships that would be, for instance, 36 square miles, 6 miles north and south, 6 miles east and west, and then those would be broken down into mile squares, and there'd be 36 of them in a township.
And then some of that in places can go into voting in different things, or are there other implications? I feel like I remember.
Well, there's the there's civil townships, which would be, I guess, and I'm walking on thin ground here. They're townships that are based on how land was split up. Then there is the civil townships, which would be the government townships, and those can be different from the layout of the land.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Always fascinated by the history that brought us to today. Okay. Yeah, I can't remember that guy's name, but the townships, the 36 square, is what I was thinking about.
It's kind of fascinating when you talk about Union County. Union County was established in 1820, and it was established from the union of parts of 4 other counties: Delaware, Franklin, Madison, and Logan counties, and a portion of the old Indian Territory lying north of the Greenville Treaty Line. So the two northern townships that we have in Union County, Washington and Jackson, both lie north of the Greenville Treaty Line. So the Greenville Treaty Line crosses Union County and is coincident with the southern boundary lines of Jackson and Washington townships.
Really? There's some good fun facts.
Yes.
Huh. So then, so almost the split in Union County, is that the one, you know what I mean? How Union County, is that where the previous township line or the county line was?
Yes.
The north and the south?
Yeah. The lines are again, there was
I've never paid attention to that.
parts taken from those 4 other counties, and exactly how those lines were determined, I do not know.
Let's see what Google says. County, Ohio.
Like Marysville here, where we are, prior to 1820, Marysville was part of Delaware County. So when Samuel Culbertson, who was the fellow who founded Marysville, he bought 450 acres here, and that was all in Delaware County. Bought it in 1817, and then Marysville was platted in 1819.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to look at the map. Let's see if I can pull it up a little bit. That's a little farther. It'll zoom in. But I assume that line, that horizontal line there, so that was Delaware over.
That I just don't know.
Okay, so probably Franklin was squared off here.
Yeah, there is a website somewhere where you can figure that out.
Okay, yeah, just trying to. I always wondered why there was that weird kind of offset jog there, and I'm assuming it has something to do with that.
Another thing that's kind of interesting, and Ohio was developed from the south north. So the first counties were along the river.
Oh, yeah,
river.
yeah.
But many of those counties were long and narrow. They would extend from the Ohio River all the way up to Lake Erie. So in the first subdivision, the first village that was platted in Union County was North Liberty, which was just north of Plain City at the Big Bend in Darby Creek. And that was laid out in 1797. At that time, that was part of Ross County. So if you want to find the original plat for the village of North Liberty, you have to go to Chillicothe to find it. Because that was, it's...
Really?
Yes.
I never would have guessed. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I remember that show on the History Channel, how states were made, and talking about giving governance or municipalities or whatever access to water because that was trade and distribution of getting your goods in or out.
Sure.
So that would make sense to access to the river. But went all the way up, really. Huh.
Yep. And then if you had, like Ross County, probably, I don't know what the county may have been out of which Ross County was created, but Ross County probably extended, when it was created, it probably extended from that southern county all the way north to the lake.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. And then they just, as the counties grew north, they just get lopped off.
Okay.
When new counties were created.
I mean, looking at the map, like the county layout of Ohio, you do kind of see a line up through there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
And when I mentioned the Greenville Treaty Line, where it crosses Union County, that's probably the longest straight line we have in the county. That one line that goes totally across the northern part of the county. It probably isn't a straighter line anywhere.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember seeing the plaque. I had a client that bought a house on Treaty Line Road, and I never really paid attention. I've been a mile from it lots and lots of times, but never went that far.
Yeah, it follows Treaty Line Road, not the whole length of Treaty Line Road, but part of it, and then it follows Boundary Road.
Okay. And so that was the division between the Indians and us, or, whoever you want to say, right? Right. I say I can't remember too much of my history there. And that was around the 1779-ish time frame.
That was the Greenville Treaty was a result of the Greenville Treaty was signed in 1795 after General Anthony Wayne defeated the Indians in the Battle of Fallen Timbers. And then he and his men met, 12 or 14 different Indian chiefs at Fort Greenville, and they signed that Greenville Treaty in 1795. And then that line that cuts through Union County is actually part of a 150-mile straight line that cuts across most of Ohio. Goes from a point on the Tuscarawas River over to a point near the village of Fort Loramie. And that was surveyed in 1797. We've probably gotten a little off, which is okay.
I was going to say, no, that was some good information.
Where I suppose we got off, and we're talking about how the state of Ohio developed.
Yep.
Which is kind of how Union County developed. And
it gets there.
Yeah.
For my own benefit, definitely things that are on my bucket list to learn one day.
Sure.
More of this and understand. And like I said, I'm fascinated. Like I started with, understanding where we came from and how we got here. What are the things we don't want to repeat? What are the things we do want to repeat? What are the lessons we learned? And perspective on some of those things with, obviously, do you have any, I should know this number, but do you have any idea how many houses are being, or how many potential houses there are right now? I mean, it seems like if you add up the developments, there's...
I do not know.
Starting to be a significant number.
One thing that's interesting is the largest number of building permits that we've ever issued in 1 year in Union County was in 2003. We issued about 586, I think, permits, and I don't think we've ever reached that point again. Of course, it fell off substantially in the recession of '08 to '11.
Yeah, I wonder what we're at now.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier, between Amrine Meadows across from Mill Valley, across from Bunsell Middle School. I'm drawing a blank on a couple other ones, plus the potential ones. So anyway, just somewhat of a transitional point, I think, for the community, and it won't be too long before there's going to be a more significant change. And so getting back to the history, part of what I wonder is kind of subdivisions kind of started in the 50s, 60s, after the war, and people had kids and growing families and all of that. I always wonder what it was like prior to that and how things functioned and how people got houses and what those things were, and did subdivisions kind of ruin something?
It's always been like that, but where there were, they usually called them additions back in prior to World War II, maybe. But that's how it would happen. Where
just attractive homes.
Yes, a landowner might decide that he wanted to develop his land, or he hired somebody or sold it to somebody who wanted to develop it, and they'd put a street in and lay it off in lots and sell lots. I think what's probably changed a lot since then are the requirements for development. Requirements for streets are more consistent. Some streets that you drive on to this day have no curb and gutter along them. It's because there was no requirements in place for that.
Didn't have to.
Right.
And that was going to lead me to that helps lead me to my next thought. When it was like that prior to World War II or around that time, I assume it wasn't one builder doing it. There probably weren't outfits that could handle that.
I don't think there were, at that time, my guess is most home builders were local.
And so it's probably whoever you could get, whatever. I think because I guess I was making the correlation that with the requirements, somebody's got to do those things. So that probably leads it to be a developer that does it rather than the landowner just selling lots. And then so the developer, the builder, if it's one and the same, then you create a whole different situation of, well, they're all going to make costs relatively the same, look the same, and all of the things that can go into. And sometimes I wonder, is that part of the challenge, is then you're pigeon-toed into that product versus, well, my cousin over here can build me a house and it might not look like you want it. And so I've wondered some of those things as well.
My dad was in the construction business, and so my dad was in the construction business, and he started his business right after he got out of right after World War II. And in the early 50s, he formed a corporation with my dad was a home builder basically at that time, and a plumber that he used, HVAC person that he always used, and a mason that he always used. They created a company, and they developed ground. Where they'd lay off streets and lots, and they would, I guess they did it with their money, maybe they borrowed the money, I don't know. And they'd hire a contractor to come in and build the streets, and then my dad would build the houses, and those guys would do their thing with regard to masonry work and plumbing and HVAC work.
So you got a little more insight than I thought.
So anyhow, I think that's likely the way things happened, even prior to World War II.
So even then it was primarily one
I would guess.
Builder? Okay.
I would guess.
Yeah, like I said, I had always wondered that if it was just random people, whoever you could get to build it, or if, like you said, it was local builders and a community only had two builders to choose from.
Yeah, and they probably had a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think back to when I first came to town here in '73, we had a lot of local builders.
Really?
And then as time went on, the business got, building business got so big, and they got to be very corporate. So I think that in the end, the local builder was not driven out of business. Well, some of them were driven out of business because of they couldn't do things as cheaply as what these larger corporations could.
Yeah,
There's still local builders around, not nearly as many as they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so just kind of interesting look at your notes here from the Conley subdivision in 52 to Timber Trails. I didn't realize Timber Trails was that old. In 57.
The first phase of that was real small, maybe 8 lots, just that first drive that extended off of 38.
And so it seems like fairly consistent. Then Woodview Park in 60, Lakeview. Getting them confused. Woodview Park.
Yeah, Woodview is the one that's up off of County Home Road.
Oh yeah, okay.
Across from the OSU Veterinary Clinic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right next to the school.
Yep, that's right. Thank you for helping me with that.
And notice the ones marked with an asterisk are ones that are south, and the last 6 of them are all
Keystone, Adina,
and the last 4 there, I think, are all off Weaver Road.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I learned an interesting fact yesterday. Between 42 and Mitchell DeWitt, I heard somebody did some research, or didn't do research, but was just entertaining themselves on the auditor site and found 175 acres owned by Dublin Schools.
Yeah.
Right there, and so that they were just making the connection that south of us, if we don't grow, if we don't grow to Dublin's going to hit us, and having a school right there.
Well, the school districts are pretty tightly held, and it's pretty difficult to change a school district line.
Mm-hmm.
So the coming up from Dublin on Industrial Parkway, much of the development that you see on Industrial Parkway is in the Dublin district. So they're just they're just recognized. Dublin schools are recognizing that, hey, there's going to continue to be a lot of growth in Jerome Township in our school district, and we need to be prepared for that.
Well, I remember going to a meeting, 7-8 years ago. I forget where that was, what meeting it was. But I think it was somebody from ODOT came in and talked about how they're planning for 42 to be the next roundabout around Columbus, or prepping that if that need is there, they've already done some work there. So,
right, yeah, that was back in the 90s. There was a lot of talk about something called the outer belt. John Circle, one of the previous Franklin County engineers, coined that phrase. And at that time, the thought was that 42 would become the outer belt through
back then,
Union County. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the other interesting part of this is, I moved here in 93 when I was 6. And so for the most part, this is all I know. Mm-hmm. And, so I get kind of protective of, I don't want things to change, and I like, and all that.
Right.
And so it's interesting when I hear those times of, even back then, the change was planned and understood and coming and working to be prepared for it. So one of the things I hear about, one of the many things we hear about growth and housing and all of that is how underbuilt things have been for a while. And it's interesting here to kind of see, So if we go through the years, you get to Green Pastures in 94, Woods at Quail Hollow 96, Milford Estates 96, Scott Farms in 98, Links 2003, and then we go 4, 6, 17, 21, 20. Yeah, Chestnut running 20.
Yeah.
So it kind of ramped up there. Obviously hit 08 and then took a break, and then all of the ones that we've got kind of in the works now.
Well, just keep in mind, like Adena Point, that is the first. That's the start of Adena Point, and there might have been 10 phases of Adena Point that happened over those ensuing years.
That I'll add a picture in here on the MLS. It's interesting. I can put an overlay on that has it's broken down by phase. And the first time I did that, I was blown away at how because one of the common things in Mill Valley is, well, can you have a fence, or is there an HOA here or there? And I always wondered, where exactly do those lines break? And
right.
And understanding those dividing lines again and the boundaries.
I mean, now there are probably no subdivisions developed now that don't have HOAs. Probably almost all do.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. That's fairly accurate. There's always some sort of something.
Right.
Even out in the country, when you have somebody divide something off and put deed restrictions, that
sure
could be kind of a placeholder for HOA if somebody wanted to
right
hold those things to it. Yeah, it's very interesting to think about how long this growth has been planned and a lot of and obviously the infrastructure, the water plant and all of the things like that the water lines that are ran to tie into trunk lines or whatever you guys call them for bigger support out in the new developing areas.
Yeah, our county commissioners back in the mid-90s spent $6 million to extend water and sewer pretty much all the way to State Route 161.
Yeah.
At that time, there were 4 small package wastewater plants along Industrial Parkway, and they made the decision that if we can cut an acceptable deal or contract with the city of Marysville, let's pump that wastewater, do away with those small package plants, and we'll pump the wastewater to Marysville. And then Marysville had water already at New California. And so commissioners borrowed money and extended the water, again, almost down to 161, which is what spurred the lion's share of the development along Industrial Parkway. I mean, that 240 new businesses down there.
Is that how many it is?
Yes.
Whew. I knew it was a lot.
And then in I can't remember what year it was. 2007, I think. The county sold those facilities to the city of Marysville and signed a contract with the city to allow them to serve a big chunk of southeast Union County.
Yeah, it's obviously made a big difference. That's a pretty, yeah.
And that allowed Jerome Village to happen, and all the new homes you see down along US 33. That's all as a result of that contract with the city of Marysville.
And that, I remember the first time I heard that the city provides services all the way down there, and without a backstory like this, it's hard to understand. Well, what it's sending dollars somewhere else, or you wasting efforts in a different area. It's hard for residents to understand those kind of things.
Yeah, and the thing you have to keep in mind there is Marysville's wastewater plant and sewer lines they're enterprise funds. Same way with water lines and water treatment plant. The upground reservoir, that's part of a water enterprise fund. So that's a fund that has to support itself, and it supports itself from water rates for the water, from sewer rates for the wastewater fund. So those two funds have likely gotten pretty healthy because of to some extent because of the development in Jerome Township.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the city's charging those folks an increased rate, and so it's really a benefit to me as a resident of Marysville. It benefits me. It keeps my rates lower
Mm-hmm.
for water and sewer because of the city serving that portion of Jerome Township.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So to turn our attention to the notable list you have here, I don't think I could have came up with a list that long. That's it's a good reminder of I say somewhat frequently
Mm-hmm.
how often I not anymore, but after graduating high school here, remembering people leaving and saying, "Bah, it's a little town. There's nothing to be here for," and then they leave and realize, "Oh, we actually got it pretty good here."
Yeah.
So this is a good list to remind us of that.
When I looked that down through there, Memorial Hospital was established in 1952, and where that has gone in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
In 2020, 2018, 19, 20, they made a $50 million investment in inpatient tower, outpatient tower, have this relationship with a high state medical center.
Now you see their name
Yes.
far and wide, so to speak, across the state.
There's only 7 or 8 county hospitals left in the state of Ohio.
How many?
7 or 8.
Really?
And if I had to guess, I would say that we have one of the best
I would assume so.
of those here.
Yeah, because they reach into quite a few. Not I said far and wide, statewide, but it's more than just Union County is what I was trying to get at.
They have facilities in Urbana, and getting ready to build a facility down at New California.
Yeah, so obviously they're doing well. Different facilities here and there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This so first Accord in '82 for Honda.
Right.
I talked to a gentleman who I think it was it the millionth motorcycle. He got to ride the first motorcycle that was produced that you're referring to here in 1979 when they rolled the millionth. John, what was his name? John. Draw a blank. But he the president of Honda was supposed to ride it, and have you heard this before?
I have not.
I think he was employee number 64 or something like that, and he was in class with one of the manager's wives back when Honda started, and anyway, so when it got to, I think he just retired recently. When it got to the millionth motorcycle, they wanted the president of Honda to ride it off the assembly line in honor of the millionth. And I guess he was just, I think physically maybe wasn't capable or something, and so this gentleman got to ride it off, and
Interesting.
so it's interesting and cool to hear those kind of stories of. And I mean, he was talking about getting trained in Japan and coming back and working on dirt floors because they were getting things put together, and just to see where it's at today and the impact it's had, and the suppliers and all of the things that. Yeah.
When you think about Honda choosing to locate here in Union County, and today Honda employs 14 or 15,000 people. Is
that what it's at now?
In the state of Ohio, at various locations.
Just all the impact of suppliers and whatnot, and I'm sure that's helped create. I'm sure some of the suppliers are down in the 240 businesses on Industrial Parkway, and has encouraged others and TRC and all of the spillover effect of all of those things, and then obviously plenty of other things that are on your list, and the businesses and Scott's and whatnot. So you've been here for 50?
I came here in 73. So I guess is that 50 years? Yeah.
I was going to say, what day did you move? Maybe it's on the dot. so if you why would you say Honda came here? I don't know. What's your 2 cents on why this is a good place to be? Maybe lend on that.
Well, I've been here for about 50 years, and I've totally enjoyed my time here. professionally and personally. I had a chance to experience what probably most engineers never have the opportunity to experience. I got to grow up with Honda because I can remember in like August of 1977, after Jim Page and I had started a business, and we had 3 Japanese, a fellow from the High Department of Development, Jim and myself, and then local attorney Bob Hamilton, an attorney out of Cleveland who was representing Honda, and we got to sit there to see how our company could help Honda develop here in Union County. And we sometimes had a dozen or 15 people working at Honda when they were, building the the auto plant. Got to do work at the motorcycle plant, the auto plant here. Got to do work at the engine plant in Shelby County. And then when I became a county engineer, I got to work with them in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
And then as county commissioner, I got to work with them again in a different way. And so I've spent, 45 years working with them. And I just feel blessed to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, that's really something.
Yeah.
To see. So you've got all the stories of starting out. And
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and to watch the community grow, and obviously that's part of the reason I wanted to chat with you about this. You've had that experience and seen the growth of the community along with Honda and all that's come with that. And
there were a lot of people back in the 70s that were skeptical of Honda for any number of reasons, and you could see out of town. Or journalists representing out-of-town newspapers coming here.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they didn't want to paint a positive picture on this, on Marysville or Honda locating here. Newspapers out of Northeast Ohio, where they were, they wanted that to locate. They wanted a plant like that to locate there. They didn't like the fact that Honda was going to be non-union. And then there were older people here that lived through World War II, and they had.
I heard of some of that. Yeah.
They had a difficult time accepting Honda for that reason, and I get that. I totally get that.
Yep.
But I think over the years, Honda's been a good neighbor. I think they've contributed greatly to not only Union County, but Central Ohio and Ohio itself. So I think that's a very, very positive story. Very positive story.
For sure. Well, I guess to kind of bring it full circle back to today, that people were skeptical and not exactly welcoming of that project all the time, and obviously we've helped create a pretty great community, in my opinion. So whether or not I'm for or against the growth, it is coming. It's on its way, and it'll work itself out.
Yeah, and I think growth is a good thing. I think we have the opportunity to manage that growth, and maybe we can manage the growth better than what we do today. But if we don't grow, we falter, and not say we're going to die, but you have to continue to grow. You have to continue to grow. We have a comprehensive plan that the city of Marysville adopted in 2018, and I think generally we've been following that comprehensive plan. And I remember serving as a stakeholder on that for that plan, and I was disappointed with the amount of people we had show up at open houses that we'd have.
Yep.
If people need to get involved and they need to have input at the proper time, it's too late once you decide where you're headed and what you want to look like. It's really too late.
Yeah, and that's another challenge that a lot of people don't understand. I've seen comments on social media of they're just following the comprehensive plan. And so people don't understand that if you don't speak up when it's time to plan, that helps set a tone and a precedence and rules for how things are supposed to go when they come up. So when these developments come up, as you're saying, if you don't speak up, I remember some of those meetings, and yeah, it was interesting how many people weren't there. Obviously, it's not like everybody's going to show up, but still, out of a community of, if it was a city meeting, you had 25,000 people, to rough out a number, and there were 30 or 50 people at the night I was there, and then I'd see comments on social media, and my thought was, well, I didn't see you at the meeting to voice your opinion, so I totally get it.
I would imagine that that the city will probably want to update that comprehensive plan maybe in another couple of years, and I would just encourage people to participate in that. Just keep in mind, we don't want to prevent growth. We want to help manage it.
Yep.
That's what's critical.
I would agree. Unless you want to buy it and do it yourself. Somebody else is going to do it. So, yep. Get out, voice your opinion, work. Again, try to help create and be part of a better conversation to help expand the horizons of people out there to understand how things work as far as how rules are made and what's supported and what's not, but also just whatever buildings get built, whatever roads get put in, infrastructure and all of that, a community is still the people and the relationships here. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that gets lost is you can sit on one side of the fence or the other, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a conversation and work as a community, that's the real loss in my opinion. So got to focus on that and keep working together. Like you said, collaboration, that's that's where I've heard you say that many times at meetings. And something
that's always encouraged me. I've always always volunteered a lot, and used to volunteer at Union Station uptown, gift shop. And when new people would come in or people would come in, I always tried to engage them, find out where they lived, learn about them, and to a person, I think every person I talked with commented about how friendly people are here in Marysville and Union County, and I think that's valid. I think as a whole, I think we're a very friendly community.
Yeah, that does come up a lot, and I think that goes to the let's all work together and keep it that way. Let's be part of maintaining that. That's really what it comes down to.
We have a lot of good things going on. We've got wonderful parks. I think we have from a like a total acreage standpoint of the parks that we have. I think in my just drawing on my experience, I think we have substantially greater acreage of parks than what many other communities our size have.
Yeah, you have 575 acres of parks.
Yes.
Yeah, with the recent addition of the Scott Park.
Yep.
112 acres, that's a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really, really substantial that we've got that. And the trails, I think that's really the...
Yeah. I'm excited about where the city wants to go with trails. They'd like to connect that Scott Park on Waldo Road to the reservoir on Raymond Road.
Yep.
And I look forward to the day when I can walk from from that Scott Park to the
Get all the way
reservoir.
over there.
Or maybe start at the reservoir so it's downhill.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, especially walking up the hill at the reservoir is enough.
Yeah.
And then getting down to the creek over there.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, thank you for your time, sir.
Sure. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no, the wisdom that you share and the experience with Honda and definitely volunteering. Like I said, I've been in lots of meetings that you've sat in and shared your thoughts and opinions, and I value them and appreciate the effort that he's got a street named after him, so obviously he's got some sway here, but the impact you've had obviously carries in that, and definitely your fingerprints are here. So,
thank you.
Yeah. So, anything else to add?
I don't think so.
Random notes.
Cover a lot of ground here today.
Yeah, that's my problem. We're at an hour. I have a hard time holding it to a half an hour because get fascinated and go off on tangents and listen to stuff. If I can remember what to say, if you like the video, like it. If you want to subscribe to see more that's coming out. If you have any questions, I'm sure Steve would connect with you. Leave a comment on the video or anything. And if you want to come chat next time, love to have you. Until next time, take care.
Okay. See ya.